I'm headed for a land that's far away, beside the crystal fountain. So come with me, we'll go and see the big rock candy mountains.
And here we go. We're on again. This is the Great Classic Rock Debate March Madness edition. It's also going to be the Hotel California edition. But since March Madness got started today, I thought I would just say that. I'm Kenny.
I'm Paul, and as usual, I have 0 qualifications.
Just as he's supposed to. So if you happen to be watching right now, please like, comment, and subscribe. Like, comment, and subscribe. That's how we build our channel. We try to keep it based in classic rock. We try to keep it interesting. So anything and everything as it pertains to classic rock is on the table. Now, we did an episode a couple months back about Deacon Blues, and I thought that one was really good. I mean, I think most of them are pretty good, but anytime you do a deep dive into the lyrics of a song, particularly songs that may not necessarily be well understood, I think that those are going to turn out pretty good and pretty interesting. So we're going to start off with Hotel California. Depending on how time goes, we may sort of transition into Boys of Summer, both Don Henley songs, thus the reason for that particular transition. I want to begin with just sort of a general statement about artists. I mean, doesn't necessarily have to be music artists. In this case, it is, but just artists, period, actors, singers, whatever, musicians, who try to incorporate their social or political opinions into their art, whether it be in their songwriting or whether it be the speeches that they make at the Academy Awards, or whether it be a screenwriter who's trying to, write a screenplay that has his political stance or whatever. I think that generally speaking, this usually turns out not in a favorable way, put it like that. I mean, I'm just gonna use Bono as my example here. I mean, I don't agree with Bono's politics, so be it, but I think that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you know YouTube better than I do. I think that Bono, in his heart at least, I think that he believes he's changing the world when he writes songs that pertain to this cause or save the whales or whatever. And I think the people that buy his music don't really care about that. I just think they like good music and good rock or whatever. So tell me your thoughts on that before we...
On YouTube, oh boy, they're a very complicated band, because like, if 3 of them were born-again Christians, the bass player
Right.
was not, and they come from Dublin, Ireland, as you know.
Right.
They got thrusted. They were really famous kind of early. And I don't think they were ready for the real world. Like, I actually met a band called Sean O'Connor and the Lookalikes in Delray Beach at Boston's Bar and Grill.
Right.
And they told me that, yeah, they were from Dublin, and they were the guys who showed them the ropes, and they opened up for them for a while. And I went, oh, okay, right. And I Greta Van Fleet, I told them everything. No. So they were in their van, and they must have brought their van. Oh, I don't know how they did it, but they toured here, and they brought up books of pictures.
Oh, wow.
It was really cool. So they were saying, yeah, they were naive and idealistic, and
Right.
like,
I think artists generally are.
like
They've got this image of what they think the world should be.
right.
Yeah, and they want to...
See, I think the line for me personally is, you could bring a problem to our attention, and that's cool. But when you try to make a solution to that problem, that's what,
Right.
Everyone says famine is terrible, war is terrible. What's your solution? Put down all of our weapons. No.
Right. Okay. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to say one of the songs, and I know there's been a few, where you could look back and say this song probably did have a significant cultural or social message that got through to people, and that song War, what is it good for? You know, I think that's probably a pretty good example. It was timely. I mean, people were opposing Vietnam, and then that song comes out, and it really sort of amped up that whole anti-war sentiment, I think, you know.
Well, I can give you another example real quick before we dive.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was on this trip in England with a group of people, and like 10 of them were from Australia. So as a kind of a funny dig, I brought up that Midnight Oil song and
Beds Are Burning.
It's a horrible song.
I hate
it. They were all crying in laughter at how pathetic those people were, and how like there was a famous they did this in Australia. They built a city of single family homes for the Aborigines. Within a week, like let's say there are 500 houses. Within a week, like 490 of them had been torn apart.
I heard about that. Yeah.
And they burned it. And they're like, you can't. These people are going to be the way they are. You can't.
Right.
And they all thought this guy was the biggest pompous butt on earth.
Right.
All right. So.
Yeah. So anyway, so when artists write songs that have some sort of either social or political message or whatever, you know, sometimes, probably oftentimes, that message gets totally lost, which is fine with me because I just want good music. I don't really want your messages shoved down my throat, but sometimes I might or I might not embrace it. But oh, Steve's signing in. Didn't see that coming, but that's fine. So anyway, we spoke about Don Henley a few weeks back, in which we talked about the song Dirty Laundry.
Right.
And how there was a great irony that he's writing the song as an attack on the media because they had such fun. They were salivating at the notion of him being caught and arrested with a 17-year-old hooker doing drugs in a hotel room. But it's like, dude, you were guilty. If they had falsely portrayed you, that would be one thing, but you're guilty. So, and normally he's the kind of guy who would side with the media. So we talked about the irony there. So Hotel California, I'll tell you what, before I even say a word about it, do you have any just instant thoughts or opinions about what the song's about or about the message or anything like that?
No, we'll talk. You go first, and then,
okay.
Yeah.
And you've heard me say this before. This is one of those songs that if you Google what is the meaning of Hotel California, you will have literally hours of amusement and entertainment reading all of the people arguing and virtually fighting over what that song's about. But if you read enough of those discussions, you will come away with a pretty good idea of what it is about. So anyway, the song is basically a message, a social message, written by Don Henley, but some of the other Eagles co-wrote it with him, in which he's talking about the culture of materialism, greed, excess, whatever. He's choosing California as his ground zero because I suppose sometime in the 60s, as all of this wealth really started to accumulate in particular areas of California, and people were building the lavish mansions and driving the amazing cars and owning their own jets and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I suppose most of the rest of us, regular people, weren't living that lifestyle. And so it became a very visible thing, and it became almost, for people who were observing it, it became almost a seduction, like a drug that drew you in because you wanted to live that lifestyle of excess and materialism and embrace all of those name brands that you otherwise wouldn't have. So that's sort of the genesis of what the song is about. One of the things that I really appreciate about Don Henley is he writes songs that are typically multi-layered. So they may say one thing on the surface, but then there's another meaning a little bit below the layer. And then sometimes there's more meaning the deeper you go. So anyway, in spite of all the kooky and crazy notions, what this song may be about, fundamentally, my takeaway from it anyway was that's pretty much what it's about. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to have to slightly disagree with you, but I think you actually were heading in the right direction when you said
Okay.
it's a drug. In my opinion, now I've never met any of the Eagles that I know of. I lived in LA for 10 years. I ran into a lot of people, but I never met any of them, I don't think. It's not while sober. That's a joke. But I think it's about addiction. Addiction now could be addiction to drugs, alcohol, the lifestyle, like you're saying, the hedonism, all these things. And in that term, a little quick aside, do you know the song Outshined by Soundgarden?
I do not.
Okay. He's talking about, Chris Cornell is talking about, he is in a depression, and he says, made a movie with this title. He goes, I'm feeling California. No, I'm looking California, but I'm feeling Minnesota. That's the lyric.
Okay.
So he's looking good on the outside, but inside he's depressed and crappy, like the stereotype of the state of Minnesota is. And they actually made a movie called Feeling Minnesota. And I think Keanu Reeves,
Okay.
I can't remember anymore. But yeah, so I think the song is about addiction because if you've ever been to these counselors, people in your family or friends who are addicts, they're like, you can't grab a hold of it. You can't kill it. Like he's like, you can check in anytime you want. You can never leave. Like it's a really good metaphor. And then you're like,
agreed.
Stabbing it, and you can't.
Right. That was one of the, there's a website. I'm going to pull it up here real quick. There's a website called, that's the wrong page, called
Losers who are trying to analyze a song.
That's it. You obviously been there before, right?
Yes.
Songfacts, songfacts.com. Songfacts is one word. And not only do they interview the original songwriter or the band members or whatever, but they have like a long discussion forum section where people write their own thoughts and opinions. I'll tell you, there's some really interesting stuff written there. And so one of the things they talk about there is how the lifestyle thing that I was talking about, that can be applied in so many different ways. It could even be applied. It could even be applied in the sense of a relationship that is over, but is still pulling the guy back in, like a drug, even though it's not good for him, So I believe that, we've talked about this before. Art is subjective. It's open to interpretation. So certainly all of those interpretations are fair.
I think that's good songwriting.
It really is. Oh, no, it really is. It really is. As much as I don't agree with so much of the political messages of Don Henley, dude, he's a great musician. He's a great songwriter. He's a great performer, all those things, So I can distinguish, I can compartmentalize the things that I don't particularly care for versus the other things. He's a really talented guy. And, one of the reasons that we even chose these two particular songs, Hotel California and The Boys of Summer, was because of his brilliance when it comes to songwriting. So I'm going to read real quick what they wrote here on this site, Songfacts, which I think pretty much nails it. This song is about materialism and excess. California is used as the setting, but it could relate to anywhere in America. Don Henley, in the London Daily Mail, November 9th, 2007, said, some of the wilder interpretations of that song have been amazing. It was really about the excesses of American culture. And by the way, that term, excesses, includes drugs. It includes money, includes a lot of things, okay? Excesses of American culture and certain girls we knew, but it was also about the uneasy balance between art and commerce. So again, lots of layers of complexity to a Don Henley song. But for all of those who've cooked up all of the crazy ideas, oh, we should mention this too. There was at one point in time, way back when, a big debate about that phrase, the warm smell of colitas. So do you know what that's about?
No, I have no idea.
Okay. Oh, dude, let me tell you. People used to fight and argue over that one too. Colitas is just I think it's a Spanish word, but it's a general word for leaves. So burning leaves, if it was marijuana, you would get that warm smell. But there is a more specific herb in which colitas is used to refer to that specific herb, but in a more general sense, it just means marijuana. So that's, you know, that's what that phrase meant. Nothing deeper than that. No.
That kept me up for years. I couldn't sleep. Insomnia over that.
But don't you admit it's funny when a song uses a particular lyric or a word in which you're going, what the hell did he say? Because in that song, The Joker by Steve Miller, the pompatus of love, everybody wondered for years, what in the world is that all about?
He had his Roger's thesaurus out and went,
right, right.
That's the word I'm using, pompatus.
Exactly. Okay, well, do we have anything else you want to add? I mean, if we go through the lyrics line by line, there's a lot to be added, but I think we've covered that. Yeah. If there's anything else you want to add for Hotel California, otherwise we're going to sort of move on over to Boys of Summer.
Okay. I knew this lady. I lived in LA for 10 years. There's a hotel that's near. That's what I was doing on my phone when the show started.
Okay.
It's near Sunset. I'm trying to remember now, and maybe Highland, but I think it's one. And that's the hotel where the Eagles lived when they were making this album.
Okay.
And if you go in there, you can see some of the shots they took of the Eagles making the album cover. That's there. It's this hotel.
Okay.
If you go there, if you're like, I knew a lady, she lived there, so she took me there one day and said, "Hey, the manager, hey, can you show Paul?" He's, "Oh yeah." He started showing me all the stuff in his office, and like, "Oh wow, they lived at this room house, whatever it was called, when they were making the album."
Okay.
So it's pretty cool, like a piece of, you know.
I agree.
Yeah, so it's anyway, so that's all I have.
Well, okay, you know what? Since you added that, let me add one more thing because I think this is important. You know, stylistically, this was a real departure. If you go back to the Eagles' first album, Take It Easy and Peaceful Easy Feelings, that was that laid back California, almost country rock kind of thing, but it was very, I don't know what word to use. It didn't have a rock edge to it whatsoever, you know? And of course, that's all pre-Joe Walsh. So by the time they record this album, I mean, this song, it's probably fair to say it doesn't sound like anything ever recorded. It's very different and unique, but it certainly doesn't sound like anything they had done. And so they went off in a different direction. And well, first of all, it was very successful. It's a great song and memorable to this day. It has probably been overplayed over the years. Also notably, several other artists have covered it, and I think they were god awful, terrible.
That's a song you should never touch.
Nope, should never be touched. Agreed.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
The song "Life's Been Good," did that came out before or after Hotel California?
After.
So I was going to say that the Hotel California was the progenitor.
Ah,
good.
There's a clear lineage there. I didn't think about that, but you're right. You're exactly right.
When you said Joe Walsh, I was like, oh wow, because that's what he's talking about.
That's perfect. Yeah. But I mentioned this before. That song, "Life's Been Good," was from the soundtrack of that movie FM, which was a terrible movie, but it's going to be worthy of an episode. So sooner or later, we have to do an episode on that awful movie, if for nothing else, the great soundtrack. Let's move to the Boys of Summer. Do you have any instant thoughts on Boys of Summer?
I really like that song, but I would like to hear it once a month, and that's it.
Okay.
Because it's one of those songs that, one of like maybe a couple hundred songs that we both, or probably more, images. I'm not sure if I've ever seen a music video for that song. Maybe I have. I don't realize it.
Yeah.
But it just conjures up such mental imagery in your mind.
Hold on. It's funny that you say that because that's almost what's going on in the video. Like they're showing these images of people playing volleyball on the beach or whatever.
I've never seen it. Yeah.
You know what? It's a good video. The video is well done. But the video does exactly what you're just describing. And that song does really conjure up images.
It's a weird song. I mean, you know a lot more about the song than I do, but it's rare that we should have a song, we should have an episode where one band song references the music of another band. Right. I saw a Dead head sticker on this tonight. You can never go back. You can never right. Like, wow, they must like the Dead, or I don't know. It was cool that they referenced the Dead in that song, but you could take over.
Okay, well we're going to come back to that lyric. Okay, I think it's a brilliant song. For me, it grew over time. I mean, I liked it.
Yes.
I liked it in 1984. I thought it was a great song. I sang along with it and I watched that great video. But as the years passed and I gave more thought to the lyrics and what it was saying, whatever, I go, wow, that song is getting better and better. That doesn't mean I like to hear it every day. Once or twice a month, it's fine, but it's a great song. Okay, once again, I'm going to go back to song facts just to read this little blurb, just to sort of start the conversation here. The Boys of Summer is about looking back on a past relationship and wanting your ex back, wanting to return to what you had. The first verse depicts how the writer is left behind. His ex has moved on, but he hasn't, and he still hangs on to hope. Okay, so the Boys of Summer is sort of a metaphor. Their relationship has come to an end, presumably in the spring. So now she's free of him, and she's, in the video, it's at the beach. So she's at the beach hanging out with all these guys, meeting guys at the beach, whatever, and that represents this whole notion of Boys of Summer. And he wants her back, okay?
Right.
And as you move forward with the lyrics of the song, that's what it's about. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And it was that lyric about the Deadhead sticker on the Cadillac that always stuck in my mind. Because as gifted and brilliant as Don Henley is at songwriting, I kept saying to myself, he didn't choose that arbitrarily.
No.
And it says in that on that song facts that he actually was in his car driving and he saw the Cadillac with the Deadhead sticker, the Grateful Dead sticker, and he said, "I got to use that in a song." But
Oh,
for
that's
me,
it. I thought.
no, I mean that was that's what created that one line. But for me, this is where the song goes from good song to extraordinary. Okay, so as we know, he's a liberal guy, and he's the kind of guy who's anti-corporation. You know how these wealthy actors and wealthy musicians, they stand against the greedy corporations, the ones who pay them.
Yeah.
So he's the kind of guy who, in the 60s, would have really embraced the Grateful Dead. Because think about it. They were long-haired 60s hippies, and their fans drove VW, old, beat-up VW vans with Grateful Dead stickers all over. So that was what a Grateful Dead fan was in the 60s. Now, this song, The Boys of Summer, has now come out. It's 1984. So those young, innocent, idealistic Grateful Dead fans from the 60s are now middle-aged. They're 35 or 40 by now, right? And as you and I both know, sometimes, well, not sometimes, always, virtually always, reality trumps idealism, okay? Idealism, it sounds great on paper, but reality sets in. So all of these 60s hippies who were going to see the Grateful Dead in their VW fans covered with Grateful Dead stickers and, smoking dope and living together or whatever they were doing back in the 60s, they're married with kids by this time and raising their family, buying a decent home, buying a decent car. The thought of how am I going to put my kids through college? Those things now have taken over. And the idealism, the innocent, youthful idealism of the 60s has given way to reality. And when he says he saw it on a Cadillac, I mean, maybe there's an insinuation there of greed, but I don't even think it's relevant. What he's really saying is, in the 60s, that guy was driving a VW van with long hair going to see the Grateful Dead. And nowadays, he's wearing a suit, he's got short hair, he's raising kids, he's married, he's driving a Cadillac, but he's still trying to cling to I'm still a Grateful Dead fan. So there's a certain irony there in which Don Henley, I suppose, is just facing the reality that life brings changes that we don't foresee. Oftentimes we don't foresee, but they happen anyway. And when they do, we roll with those changes. We cope with them and as best we can. And sometimes it changes who we are.
Yeah, and plus the irony, the double irony of the fact that before he died, Jerry Garcia was worth like $500 million.
Right.
Because
Right.
the Dead, they are geniuses, okay? Because when they release an album, they're like, we don't give a rat's ass how many albums this album sells, how many sales this album
Right.
gets.
Right.
This is what a real band should do. Unlike other bands, we're not going to start bashing bands, but they would encourage their fans to swap bootlegs of their music. So they're all these, oh, I got the 69 at Monterey. Oh, I got 72 at Tampa. Oh, switch. They encouraged they loved it because they knew they made all their money from the merchandise and the tour.
Right.
Tickets.
Right.
You know, and that's how they made and that's why they got so wealthy. They're like, we don't give a rat's butt about the record companies.
Right. I really admire them for that too, as a matter of fact.
You know, he married when he, go ahead.
All I was going to say is, I was never really a big fan of their music.
Not me either, no.
Yeah, I've listened to a little bit over the years and just doesn't do that much for me. They had a medium-sized hit back in the 80s called Touch of Grey. Yeah. And even when I hear it now, I shrug and go, I don't, doesn't do anything for me.
There's a South Park episode. I don't think you've seen it.
No.
And it's called Die Hippie Die. And what happens is they create a new Woodstock in South Park. And all the bands are like that band, Grateful Dead, and there's this other band called Phish, Phish.
Right, right.
And so there's like 1 million people coming to South Park, and they won't leave. And the mayor thinks, oh, they have money. These are hippies. They don't have any money. And so they won't leave. So Cartman, I don't know if you saw that movie, The Core, which is god awful.
Awful. Horrible.
They start mimicking. They build a machine, and Cartman drills through the crowd. And the plan is to get up on stage. And what they do, they put Slayer in at full volume. So they get up there, and they put the Slayers on. Oh, man, it's ruining my buzz, bro. They all start dispersing.
Wow.
And the show is so, because like Chef is the only black guy in town, right? So they and so Cartman, remember Delroy Lindo has to give himself up, I think, to die in the movie. I forgot. Remember they're in the middle of the earth, and I think he's the guy. I can't remember anymore.
Don't ask me to remember it because it's agony. So
Cartman goes, all right, we got an engineer, we got a scientist. All we need now is a one black person who's willing to sacrifice his life. And they're painted to the crowd, and they go, oh yeah. And Chef goes, yeah, I know, it's me, because he's the only black guy in South Park.
Right.
And then when it comes to that point, like, what are we gonna do? And then Cartman goes, no, Chef, I won't let you sacrifice yourself. I won't let you do it. He's like, I didn't volunteer. It's a brilliant episode.
Those guys are well, I don't know where they come up with the ideas they come up with.
They hate that music too, because they are ripping on the music the whole time of the whole episode. Anyway, that was my 2 cents for the Grateful Dead.
All right, that's fine. Also, I'm just going to mention real quick. I don't remember how long ago it was. I would say 10 or 12 years ago. There was a band called the Ataris, Ataris, which was wasn't that an old video game or something?
Yes,
Atari?
the very first one, I think, actually.
Yeah, and they did a cover of The Boys of Summer. They're like a pop punk kind of band. It's not hardcore punk, but it's got a punk edge to it. And the first time I heard it, I said, that's terrible. That's not going to go anywhere. And I was wrong. It became a fairly medium-sized hit, which for the life of me, I don't understand.
Because we can spend a whole 5 shows. Today's kids from 35 down are made to think that people like Cardi B and these people have musical talent. But they have none. And it all sounds like club. It's this, my vajayjay is good, yours is terrible, I stole your man. It's just garbage. It's
Well,
garbage.
if you stop
on purpose, it's done on purpose.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll say this. They waited so many years after the original that certainly the younger generation who would hear this new version, they're not familiar at all with the original. But the part that I found so irritating about it was all of the elements that made that original so good. That, like you said, it conjures up these images, and musically, and the layering of the lyrics. This had none of that. It was just sort of like noise. I'm like, how would anybody like this? I don't get it. Anyway, we got our warning, so
all right, so let me say one more thing. I knew we were doomed about 15 years ago on American Idol. Here's when I knew we were doomed.
Okay.
So one of the girls goes, one of the singers, I'm going to sing Turn the Beat Around by Gloria Estefan. And I start screaming at the television. She didn't write that effing song, you stupid moron.
Right.
You know, like screaming at it.
I'm impressed that you know that Gloria Estefan didn't write that song.
And I said, Vicky Sue Robinson wrote that song, and you jackasses on American Idol didn't correct her or put a thing on it. You just let that lie go. And that's what I started to realize. I was like, so this is done on purpose to destroy the work of others who came before you, so they could filter their garbage in. Sorry, that's me pontificating.
No, I'm now going to add a thought to that. You know the song by Sly and the Family Stone called "Everyday People." Okay, it was used in the '90s as a sample for a rap song by a group called Arrested Development. I think the song was Tennessee. I think. So anyway, there was an award ceremony 10 or 15 years ago, some kind of red carpet thing, and there's an R&B singer named Ciara, C-I-A-R-A.
She's married to Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that's the one. She was on the red carpet, and they stopped her, and they said, what were your thoughts about the show? And because they had done a tribute to Sly and the Family Stone, and she said, yeah, I always thought that song was by Arrested Development. And I went, oh my God. If you're going to be a musician, and that's a choice, you should know the history. You just should, so
it's
my thoughts.
It's embarrassing. Same with movies.
Yeah.
I went to film school with a girl, and I was like, we were on a set, otherwise I would have screamed in her face. She goes, yeah, I've never seen The Godfather. And I said, must kill you. You must die. But nope.
Yeah. If you're going to be in movies, then you should see The Godfather. Okay, Steve's trying to hop on again, but let's wrap this up. We're going to shut it down, and then we'll come right back, okay?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we won't do any nominations for tonight. We'll save that for next time. Okay, so this is the Great Classic Rock Debate. I'm Kenny.
I'm Paul.
Yes, and we'll see you next time.
Never.